This is a 3D video, so use your mouse to look around, use your thumb to look around on the phone. You can zoom in, zoom out. If you have a 3D headset, if you have a VR headset or a cardboard or something like that, you can use that to watch it. Anyway, I'm going to walk along the river, the new river in Fort Lauderdale, and do some bit of a guided tour. This is Cooley's Landing, which is a marina with boat ramps. So this is a saltwater river. We're about 3 miles from the ocean. We're walking towards the ocean. This marina is in the Sailboat Bend neighborhood of Fort Lauderdale. Oh look, there's a little paddle boat here. Paddle party boat. This is near the site of the original Fort Lauderdale. Actually, Mr. Cooley, for whom this marina was named, in 1836, I think it was killed by the Seminole Indians. And they sent troops commanded by William Lauderdale, which is where the city gets its name. And they built a fort, which they called Fort Lauderdale. And that fort, there's been a few Fort Lauderdale forts over the years, but the original one was right about here. Now the name of this river is the New River, which is Himmershey in Seminole language. And the oral history of the river, according to the Seminole Indians, was that the river appeared suddenly overnight after a loud bang and shaking of the ground. So this river was formed suddenly, according to the Indians' oral history. The river was formed suddenly by an earthquake. And it's not very comforting to know that if you live in Fort Lauderdale, that there was once an earthquake so powerful that it created this river. The river goes from the ocean to the Everglades, although the part that goes to the Everglades is a bunch of canals. There's a lot of sort of man-made canals that are dug out. They originally were trying to drain the Everglades, maybe make farmland out of it. Fortunately, they gave up on that idea and actually spent a lot of work to restore the Everglades. Ahead is the 7th Avenue Bridge. 7th Avenue is Avenue of the Arts. The Performing Arts Center is on 7th Avenue. Actually, we're gonna walk by that, so I'll talk about that when I get here. These drawbridges on the rivers open on demand. So when a boat comes, they call on you can actually call them on the phone, but you call them on the radio, marine radio, and ask them to open the bridge. They open the bridge for you. That's wonderful sound. Most of the boats can go under the bridge without them needing to open, but if it's a sailboat or something large. Now there's a bunch of facilities up this river for maintaining, working on super yachts. So this river has a lot of traffic on it of enormous super yachts and fairly large boats. Usually when they go up the river, they have a...
Hey, can I get you to do me a favor?
Okay. Sure.
My hose is hooked on the cleat. Can you grab that hose?
Alright, well, I helped that guy out. Glad I could do that. So normally when the very, very huge yachts come up this river, maybe you see, if you watch my Instagram, you see some of them, they're towed with a boat, with a towboat in front and a towboat behind, because the river is so curvy when you get, especially when you get past this point, that there's no way that, this 200-foot yacht's going to be able to negotiate those curves. This is the Symphony Condominium here on the left, and this is private docks for this condominium. There's a bunch of condominiums on the river. This is the only one that I know of that has private docks, where if you live here, you can dock your boat in front of the river. That bell is the bridge. Well, I guess the bridge is probably going to open. I think is that there's a sailboat coming. So the bell rings and arms come down to stop the cars, and then the bridge opens. That's a noise. It's a boat going by. The boaters are kind enough to supply us with music. It is a beautiful afternoon, so a lot of people had their boats out. It's late in the afternoon, and as we get further down here, you see tons of boats coming back in. This river goes on for miles past this point. It's lined with boats on each side of the river. It gets smaller and smaller. It actually eventually goes under I-95. This is Olas Boulevard. The circle here is the end of West Las Olas, and then Olas Boulevard picks up again on the other side of the river, past a couple of riverbeds. On the left-hand side up here is the Broward Performing Arts Center. I guess they call it the Center for the Performing Arts. Two really nice theaters. This little building here on the left was a newly added just a couple of years ago, a Zinga Plaza, I think they call it. There's a couple statues along here. This is kind of our statue center. These docks, these floating docks on the right, were added just a couple of years ago. These are free. You can't tie up overnight, but there's a lot of events in this area. You can come up the river on your boat or down the river and tie up on these docks and spend the afternoon in the restaurants or facilities. Floating docks are nice because you don't have to worry about the tides. You tie tight to the dock. You can see the light poles have been decorated for Christmas. This park coming up is called Esplanade Park. There's a condominium on the other side of the river, the round one over there, that's called Esplanade. The Esplanade. This park, on the first Sunday of every month, we have a jazz festival here. There's usually three bands or so that play here and on down the park. Packed with people that bring your picnic basket and your blanket and on the grass up here. And there's a lot of dancing. There's a band in this pavilion, usually another band further down. These are coconut trees. Coconut trees all over the place in Fort Lauderdale. Coconuts, the only way they can reproduce is for their coconuts to drop into salt water and have them carried over. More music from our wonderful boaters. This building up here on the left-hand side was originally built to be a maritime museum, and there was a huge anchor parked in front of it, but I guess that plan went by the wayside, and instead of an anchor, now we have this giant beach chair, which is a huge tourist photo attraction. That chair is huge. On the right-hand side up here is another one of these floating docks, but on the end of it is a little kayak dock. It's the public kayak. Put your kayak in the water, it's really easy to get in and out. Across the river you can see those yellow boats. Those are the water taxis. They run regular routes here. They call them a water taxi, but they're not really a taxi. You can't call them. There used to be a water taxi here. This on the left is a Vegan Village restaurant. Closed today. And on the left-hand side up here is a Historical Society block. There's a Museum of History and several buildings. There's an old schoolhouse. On the other side of the river, ahead, you can see a restaurant with a dock out front. Really great place to tie up and have lunch. That's the Pirate Republic. And you can see ahead probably right up here, you can see the railroad bridge. That's the bridge that the Bright Line goes over, and freight trains. I made a lot of videos about the Bright Line, and that bridge features prominently in some of them. This park is teeming with iguanas, which are not native. And every once in a while in the winter, which is coming up, we'll get a few cold days in a row, 50-degree days, let's say, and they fall out of the trees. And if it's cold enough for long enough, then they die. It doesn't really get that cold here. So it takes maybe every 3 popular for weddings or wedding photo ops. On the right-hand side, there's artwork that was placed there recently. So this railroad bridge is counterbalanced with water. There's a huge water tanks on the bridge, and they fill the tanks with water, and that causes the bridge to go up, and they drain the water tanks, and it goes down. So this is the pedestrian crosswalk that goes across the tracks. I make a lot of videos here. And as we come up here, if you look to the right, you'll see the drawbridge, and then to the left, down these tracks, is the Brightline station. If you zoom in there, you can pause the video and look at things if you want. This building straight ahead is a new condominium. It's one of these several buildings here that were built, and the pandemic hit, and they finished the building during the pandemic, and they weren't able to open until really just recently. Brand new. I believe this is a rental apartment building. I don't know the name of it, but it's interesting that they've built this huge building right on top of the railroad tracks. And one thing that's been a big help is they've changed the rules so the trains, either the Brightline trains, passenger trains, or the freight trains, don't blow their horns anymore. So along this river, there's boat docking along the river. This is along the entire length of the river. It's called the Solas Marina. Usually there's more boats tied up along this river here. So coming up on the left-hand side is a couple restaurants. There's one that was open for a while, maybe for a few months, 6 months, something like that, called the Wharf. Very, very popular, was crowded all the time. Pandemic came around, boom, been closed ever since. I'm not sure what the story is, whether they're gonna open or not. I've seen people in there working. On the left-hand side here is the recently created September 11th memorial. It's a kind of a black thing with a piece of rail on it. That rail came from the World Trade Center. It's a subway rail or train rail that was pulled out from under the rubble. That was just put there in this just last September for the anniversary of September 11th. So then ahead on the left is another restaurant called Rivertail. It used to be the Irish pub, which is extremely popular, but because of all the construction around to build these new buildings, this neighborhood was not really very accessible. There used to be a huge entertainment complex here with a movie theater called, I guess it was called Riverside Plaza or something like that. Huge restaurants, dozens of restaurants and shops. It didn't work out. It was there maybe 10, 15 years, and they tore it all down and then built this stuff. Rivertail is really good. I highly recommend it. Really, really good restaurant. The bridge coming up ahead is the Andrews Avenue Bridge. Andrews Avenue is the main drag north-south, if there is such a thing. It's the street that divides north and south, or east and west rather. So the streets on the east side of this are called East whatever street, and on the west are called West. This bridge, I think the bridge just closed. So that bell rings when the arms for the cars, the swing arms, are coming up. They're doing a lot of renovation work on these bridges. A couple of them, the bridges all used to be this color, this sort of Pepto-Bismol. This park on the left-hand side is called Boubier Park. Very nice little park. It's got an amphitheater. On the other side of the river is a restaurant called the Downtowner. They have a lot of business. And coming up on the left-hand side here in this is the bicentennial Liberty oak tree that was planted here in 1976. It was actually moved here big, it's a tropical oak tree, which is different than a up north type oak tree. And this oak tree was 200 years old when they moved it here. They moved it here because they figured it was about the same age as the United States at that time, 1976. And right after this little gazebo thing on the left, you can see, if you look, if you zoom in, there's a sundial there. Unfortunately, it doesn't change for daylight savings time. This little building here on the left-hand side we're going by is a pump house. It pumps come on periodically and pump 3 big, huge, giant pumps, and they pump the stormwater out of the storm drains into the river. So this building coming up here, that is the River House Condominium. That's been there a few years. Across the river on the other side is the Broward County Jail and the Broward County Courthouse. But here is the Gondola. So you could take your lover on a cruise on the river, a bottle of wine, some music. Tons of boats coming back in. Gotta watch for the low-hanging trees. Catamaran. One of the nice things about this river is the gotta watch for the trees. I'm trying to walk along the water so I don't walk next to people, so just gotta fix my camera. One of the nice things about this river is this, as a marina, is that it's a great place to tie up a catamaran. There's actually a trimaran down here, you can see. These boats are very wide and they won't fit in a normal boat slip. So it's really great to have a place along the river. Now on the left-hand side, on the other side of these buildings, is Olas Boulevard, which is shops and restaurants, very popular shops and restaurants. Did another video there today. There was an exotic car show with all sorts of supercars. I made a 3D video there too, and I'll put that up. Actually made that video after this one. I'm dubbing the sound over this one later. So this building on the left-hand side is another apartment building that was built during the pandemic and didn't open until now. There's so much building going on around here. It's just unbelievable how many new buildings. So this bridge coming up is the 3rd Avenue Bridge. These bridges on the river open on demand. You have to call them on the radio and ask them to open. The bridges on the intercoastal open on a schedule. So if you go down Olas Boulevard to the ocean, right before the ocean, there's a big drawbridge. That opens 15 minutes after and 15 minutes before the hour. Only if there's something big enough to need the bridge to open. But these river bridges only open when someone calls them and asks them to open. Here's a trimaran. Little 3-hull sailboat. This one's actually a charter. Now there is, I understand there's a plan to tear this little Art Deco building down and build another high-rise apartment building. This building on the left coming up is the Water Garden Condominium. Very nice building. So the original purpose for the city of Fort Lauderdale here, or I guess the original place, was that this was a there was a river crossing here. The Stranahan family had a ferry across this river. So if you had your wagons or your commercial horse and buggies, this was the place where you would cross the river. So on the left-hand side up here, I guess it's a little ways down here, is the Stranahan House, which is a historical building that was the family. It was a post office and a hotel and a little restaurant and the ferry keeper at the time when it was pretty rustic around here. Fort Lauderdale is only a little over 100 years old, which by world standards is very old. There was nothing but jungle here 100 years ago. In fact, there's a riverboat that comes up this river called the Jungle Queen that's been running for 75 years. And they call it the Jungle Queen because when it first started running, this was all jungle. And it goes up this river to an island, which has a little zoo and pavilion, and they do a dinner. So you can, and that started running again maybe about a month ago. This on the left-hand side is the Solas Grand Condominium. One of these boats, I can't remember which one, has a skeleton on it still from Halloween. People decorated their boats for Halloween. It was really great. Maybe that's too many people to have in a party on your boat during the pandemic. I don't know. So up ahead on the right-hand side here is the Carry Bee, which is a paddle wheel. It's a completely fake paddle wheel. Well, that's a tourist boat. You get usually a lot of cruise excursions come. This boat mainly goes down the river to the intercoastal. It doesn't go up the river. There's a couple more. I don't know. A lot of them are sort of shut down. Go to sea on the Carry Bee. Straight ahead, that building is the Icon, which was built and opened before the pandemic, but not much. There's a couple restaurants on the ground floor that were such a shame. Beautiful restaurants that are closed. One of them probably never going to open. This plaza was completely finished, but now they've torn it up again. They're going to do something different. As we get up here and coming to the end of my walk here, but this part of this Riverwalk was just added maybe 2 or 3 years ago. 2 years ago, I would say. And the Stranahan House that I was talking about earlier is right here on the left-hand side. The building straight ahead is the Riverside Hotel. Very nice little, almost boutique hotel. That hotel was dedicated there's the Stranahan House. That hotel was dedicated in 1939 by Ronald Reagan. So this is the end of the Riverwalk, and this comes out to a plaza here. This little plaza is over top of Federal Highway, which is US 1. US 1 goes through a tunnel under this river and under Olas Boulevard, which is right straight ahead here. And that building right there, little tall building with a tiny tile roof on it, is the air shaft that ventilates the tunnel. So that's it. I hope you enjoyed this. Leave a comment. I'm not sending notifications on this thing because I don't know if a lot of my subscribers like this kind of thing, but I just felt like making it because I love my river, I love my city, and I thought I would just take a stroll.